All right, here we are with another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a really, really good podcast today. We're going to be doing one of our mental warfare episodes where we're talking about overcoming adversity, difficult times in life, and just, showing people that there's hope regardless of what you go through. Before we get into it, I want to shout out again VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's a company that was created by veterans for veterans because pretty much everybody out there knows someone that has had difficulty transitioning from active military back to normal civilian life. And during that process, you almost need people to be there for you that can help ease that transition so it doesn't turn to chaos. If you know someone that's a veteran that needs their benefits or needs a good community and camaraderie to get back into, don't hesitate to reach out to VetLife. You can contact them through Facebook, through Instagram, or vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today Megan Klock. She's a woman in the community that I actually met through the local Big I stopped in there for coffee. We got to talking a little bit, and she told me a little bit of her story. And I said, I'd love to get you on a podcast, bring you in, and have you tell that story. We work with a lot of people here from the community that, have very tough backgrounds, and just being able to see that there's light at the end of the tunnel is really important. So thank you for joining me today, Megan. And for the people that don't know you, just introduce yourself a little bit, and then let's just go into a little bit of your story.
I'm Megan. I moved here about 5 years ago from Holton Lake up north, and just trying to get back on my feet, get away from a bad area, a bad experience, bad memories, start over. Worked a couple different places here and ended up at Big I love my people there, so I stick with it.
So you were born and raised in Michigan, Houghton Lake, and then you came down here later on.
Yes.
So however you want to go into this, basically you said at some part of your life, at what age do you think that things started to become extremely difficult for you in your life?
18.
Around 18. So
Yeah.
you hit adulthood, all of a sudden the world's open before you, you have every possibility in front of you. And some bad roads are always available.
Oh, yeah. And I took them all at that point. I was raised in a really good home. Parents are still married. No problems, no struggles. Involved in everything in school, sports, any extracurricular, anything that I could do, band, choir, I was involved. And then when I hit 18, my first year of college, that summer between the two, it was like all of a sudden I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't have anything to tie me to anything. I was moving out of my parents' house at that point, and I just basically went buck wild and took every available bad road that you could take.
So before we go into more specifics and really create your story here, do you have any indication, knowing what you know now, being able to look back and reflect on that 18-year-old Megan and the woman that, like you said, came from a good home, came from married parents, a loving family at home, you were going off to college. So you had what many would consider like a good start or a head start on a lot of people, but sometimes in life when things are too easy, chaos almost like always interjects itself. It says, hey, we need to shake things up a little bit. Do you have any indication as to why you turn 18, you're killing it. It sounds like you're a natural. You're playing sports. You're the girl that in school everyone would probably think like she's going to be successful. She's breezing through it. Any indication why things changed so drastically?
I think it was just the freedom. I had always been so structured that when I didn't have anything there to structure me, it was like, I never drank in high school. I didn't smoke till I could legally buy them at 18. I didn't, smoke anything. Like, I didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, I'm 18 and I don't have anything. So I just dipped into everything that I could get my hands on. Let me try this, let me try that. And it just was this huge roll of, chaos, exactly.
Now, did you stay in college? Did you go all the way through and graduate, but during the process you were just in every avenue that you could find?
Yeah, I have my associate's degree in accounting. I went to college for 5 years to get that 2-year degree because I kept changing my major, and then I got pregnant in the middle of that and had to take a semester off. But I did finish. It just took me a long time, and it was actually the drugs that partly helped me get through it and raise an infant. So
I understand where you're coming from in the way that you had so much structure and you basically, it's almost like being in the military. When someone's telling you what to do, hey, do this and you're successful, be here, we'll take you to this practice, do that, do that. Now all of a sudden the whole world opens up. There's everything in front of you. And naturally, people want to experiment. People want to find out what they've been missing out on. That's probably a feeling if you went back to the 18-year-old Megan. She wanted to know, like, what else is out there.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm already breezing through life. I'm good at things. I'll be fine. I can do whatever I want. No harm can come to me. No bad can come to me. You know, it's like that young mentality because I remember being there. It's funny, a similar story. I never drank one time in high school, never once, never a cigarette, nothing. I was a guy that just breezed through with those circumstances without falling into the pitfalls that a lot of people did. But then, I never got into drugs or anything heavy. So when you say that you started to try all these different roads, you started to lightly talk to me before the podcast where you said you fell into addiction and things like that. Let's go a little bit into that. Where do you think it went from just being like a recreational? Because we know countless, weed is legal now.
Right.
You can go drive down the street and buy it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, that's a wild time. Imagine if we could rewind to our childhoods and just growing up in a society where it's legal. Who knows what life is going to be like now or how we're going to view things. When did it turn from, instead of just experimenting things while you're still doing well, because you're in college, you're still, the athlete that you were, a lot of things are good for you still. When did it start to turn bad, or what interaction came into your life that all of a sudden things started to take a downward turn?
I met my son's father, and he was deep into, hands in a lot of pockets as far as the drugs went. So it was really easy to get my hands on everything. And then when I was 19, I got my wisdom teeth pulled, and they handed me a script of Vicodin. And after that, it was like no matter what I did or what I tried, I always came back to the prescription drugs, always. So then, 3 years later, so I'm 20, I find myself pregnant. So I had stopped everything because at that point it wasn't serious. As soon as I was done breastfeeding, it was like I was back in school. I was trying to raise my son. I, had all these things. I had a house to take care of and all that. And it was like, if I just took a Vicodin, then I had the energy to take care and make sure my son was good. I could stay up and get my homework done. I could keep the house and not be exhausted. It like gave me the energy that I needed. And because of the background that I came from, I was so ignorant to the fact that you need it. Your body needs it at that point. I did not know that without taking it, I was going to be sick. So at that point, I was just trying to survive, make sure I had what I needed so I could get through the day. And then in the beginning, 21, after I had my son, all that, and it just turned into a 7-year stint of I have to have it every single day. So
now I'm someone that doesn't know much about, what that causes and what an addiction to an opiate like that, does to the body or the mind. Like I remember I had one really bad surgery where I broke my arm horrifically. You can see this big scar, and I lost like all the tissue in this area. And I remember they put me on a script of Vicodin and Percocet or something else. There was another one, and I remember it gave me like extremely cloudy, warm, bizarre feeling, which luckily right when I got done needing it, I just stopped. I'm very good at like cold turkey, just stopping things. I don't get stuck on things. But when you say that like it became you had to get through the day on this, is it because of the way that you physically felt? Was it the way that your mind operated? What kept you on the addiction? Or was it literally just the results? Like when you did that, you just crushed it and you just thought that whenever I need to, I'll just stop. But thinking from that perspective, how could you ever stop then? Because you're basically saying with this chemical, I can be successful,
right,
but without it, I won't.
Right. Yeah, that was basically it. It's both. It's mind and body. So in my head, I'm going, well, I guess we should start physically. Body sweats, shakes, nauseous, stomach cramps, vomiting. Like it's a serious, you're in bed for a week sort of thing especially after the long period of time. So, and with an infant son and trying to get through school and, make sure dinner's on the table.
You just almost couldn't fight the battle at that point.
Right, exactly. So it was easier for me to continue to make sure I had what I needed, even though really working and going to school, everything that I was working for money-wise was just going back into what I needed to make sure I could get through it. All of a sudden, bills weren't being paid. I couldn't pay my parents the rent. Mom, John needs diapers. Is there any way you can loan me some money? It was like...
That's what I was about to ask next, because you're saying with a 7-year thing with Vicodin, I don't know how you're getting it, but it can't be free. It can't be cheap. That's got to be an extremely different... I mean, you basically have to be drug dealing and finding a way.
Right.
Like, I need to find a way to have this money to get this product to be the person that I need to be, but then you're stuck in a mouse wheel.
Right, exactly.
You're just a hamster in a wheel that's spinning, going like, I got to make money to get this so that I can live, but then I need that. That's got to feel extremely discouraging.
And it increased. As my tolerance increased, it went from Vicodin to morphine to Dilaudid to any type of opiate painkiller that I could get my hands on. So it was a huge quantity of money, like just insane.
How much do you think you spent on opiates in that time period? Because I have no frame of reference.
I couldn't even tell you. Figure $20 a pill.
$20 a pill?
And at the end of it, I was doing like 5 to 10 a day. So it was like, I know, insane. And I'm not ashamed of it because it's not who I am anymore, but you do anything you can to get the money to get what you need. So pawning your stuff, selling stuff, stealing stuff, like anything that you can get, manipulating every person that you know to try to get them to give you money. Like, it becomes this insane... When you think addiction, you don't think how intense it is, but it's like deep in your head, that's all you can think about. Like, my studies wavered, I was calling into work some days because I was sick, I couldn't get anything, and I could not work. It was like everything else didn't matter. It's tunnel vision. You only see the next pill, the next high, it's an intense feeling.
I can see it just by watching your body language, like the way that you're trying to describe an emotion that you almost like can't really fully put words to. It's amazing. Try to break into that further. So it becomes, because it can't be you have your son, which you're living and working for. Your school can obviously drop down in priority. We can all do that. But like you're saying, it basically consumes the mind to the point that it is number one over everything in life completely. And then everything else is just a sustainability for that and to move forward.
Right.
How does the brain, because now you look at it from such a different perspective as a woman that's conquered this, how does your brain justify it during that period of life? Like, can you remember back? How are you justifying this thing that, like, if you took a step back and looked at it and you looked at the money you were spending and you were looking at the things you were doing, if you just put it on paper and you had to stare at it, you would be able to be like, okay, this is not right. But somehow all human beings, when they're doing things that don't match like their soul or their spirit, whatever, they justify it. So how does your brain, someone on the outside that doesn't understand addiction, how would you try to explain what makes you keep going when obviously the evidence is there that there's a problem?
Yeah, it just doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. You don't even try to justify it to yourself. You need it, you want it, and when you're in active addiction, you are so selfish. There is nothing else. No justification needed. I want it. I need it, period.
It's that simple.
It's that simple.
Because when I'm listening to the story, I'm trying to think of this like complexity of how your brain's like lying to yourself, and no, it's just flat out, this is number one. I need to feel that way.
Yeah.
I need to have that thing, and I'm going to do anything it takes to get it.
Absolutely.
Man,
it's insane.
How readily available is this stuff, though? Because, like some of the words that you said a word that started with a D. I've never heard of that in my life. Like, how readily available is this stuff? I thought this was like heavily regulated prescription drugs that, post-surgery or for certain patients, but like then they have fill quantities. From my, ignorant perspective on the outside, I'm thinking like they're filling someone's bottle with a 24 thing that is supposed to last 3.5 weeks. And so where does all of this come from? Why? Because I've heard of the opioid epidemic. It was actually one of the number one things being talked about last year.
It's
just everywhere?
There's a plethora of options. We would, okay, let's start with Houghton Lake is a retirement community for the most part. Like, obviously, there's a school and whatnot, but you find out who's got what, and the day they get their script, we knew who got their script on what day of the month, and we'd go to them until the script was gone, and then we'd move on. If there wasn't anybody that had a script, we could literally go up to the pharmacy and wait at the door, hold a $100 bill out the window, and buy things. Like, we called it Hey Mister. And people would just, the older people would just come to the window when they saw their money and sell you whatever they had.
Wow.
I mean, if we couldn't get anything up here, we would drive 3.5 hours down to Detroit and pick up heroin, because it's a synthetic opiate, but it's an opiate nonetheless, and it would make you not sick. Or to Saginaw, because we had a couple connects out of town. Like, we did whatever we had to do. It was insane.
It's wild hearing, because the amount of people that are so ignorant that this exists. I mean, they know, like, people that are not involved in a life like that, they know that there's things out there like this, but I don't think you ever really think how prevalent it is, or how much it's consuming the lives of people around you, unless you're like witnessing someone personally affected by it. You know what I mean? So it's fascinating, because your entire life as a human being, with all the possibilities that we have in this life to build an incredible story, a legacy, a family, fulfillment, and things like that, when you're in that moment, your entire life revolves around a drug. Nothing. Your story is that of an opiate addicted human being, until, if for like people like you break free from that story. So it was like a 7-year period of your life.
Yeah, in the beginning, when that was the most intense, every single day for 7 years, give or take.
So now here's something that I'm always fascinated by. What took place to go from that woman? What switch flips? What rock bottom did you hit? What life event? What made you finally snap to get out of that? Because that's a powerful moment.
Well, I didn't think so at the time, but I caught my first felony. So
it was a good thing, actually.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, no, it wasn't. But really, in all reality, it set me. That's when the course changed. And even though I wasn't completely clean and sober for the next 7 years, it put me on the right track. So that's when I did my first rehab. I did my first jail time. I got into AA and NA, and just started to put the pieces together a little bit. The next 7 years after the first 7 years, it was relapse and recovery, back and forth. I did 2 rehabs. I did AA and NA off and on. I did outpatient rehab. I did one-on-one counseling. I did group counseling. I did, I don't even know, methadone, Suboxone, Subzoff, Vivitrol, anything and everything that I could take to try to not have the cravings and not fight it so hard, anything that would lessen that for me. I have tried everything under the book to try to pull my life together.
Wow. I mean, so you're 25 years old, a woman that,
33.
No, not now.
Oh, then, yes.
After the 7-year period, you're about
Right.
25 years old. You're a woman, like you said, you came from a good home. You were in a bunch of sports. Life was like, growing up, life was pretty good, right? I mean, it was a good childhood. When you find yourself in jail, okay, you get a felony, you're in prison, what type of introspection or reflection did you know at that point, like, I need to change, something needs to be different? Or was it almost just like, I have to get through this circumstance to get it? Try to talk about that part of your life more, because I feel like you experienced a childhood here, and then now after 7 years, you're in a spot where life is like kind of beat the shit out of you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was definitely a low point for sure. I don't think it was probably the lowest, but it was the first low that I'd ever felt, which was a game changer in the scheme of things, So the first time, I think it was more like, I need to get through this. Like, half of my brain was like, this is the opportunity that you need to try to get your shit together.
So you knew that. You knew even during the worst part.
Partly. The other part was like, if you just get through this, then you can go get that next pill. Like, I was calling my dad, come find me out. Like, I am sick. I can't be in here. So he came and got me, and it was like 2 days of struggling. And my parent, at that point, I'm living back at my parents' house because I couldn't afford to stay anywhere else. And they could help me with John while I was trying to get clean. John's my son. He's 12. But but then the other part of my brain was like, you don't have to struggle and be sick and go through this. If you just go out there and get what you need to get, then you'll be fine. So it was like a severe
It's almost like the devil and
struggle.
angel thing. Remember that thing where it's like
exactly.
one thing is whispering in your ear for a better life, and the other one's like, nah, the answer's over here.
Right. No, that's exactly it. Yeah, the cartoons are real.
Yeah, that's like a certain madness that I think only people that battle through something like this would experience, where your own mind, because it's all you,
right?
Your own mind is having war with itself about what future it's going to create.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the worst part, I think, of trying to find recovery, is because you're battling yourself. There's no one else. And you don't listen to what anyone else tells you. I mean, I was living with my parents. They have been supportive, so supportive through this whole thing. I would not be here if it weren't for them and my son. But on the other hand, the selfish part of me was like, you don't need them. Go out and get what you need, and you'll be fine. Like, this is too hard.
God, just hearing those words, like, it infects the brain to the point where it's like, your parents don't matter, other people don't matter.
My son didn't matter.
Nothing matters. Now that you're coming on such a further spectrum of that, you probably look back and you're like, how did I think like that? You know what I mean? Because like, even when you first started talking about your son, you light up now. Like, that's your son. Like,
right.
That's, so it's just such a fascinating thing what our brains get. Like, we're capable of so much good, so much potential, but we are equally capable as so much struggle and chaos and unrest in our own mind. And like you said, if you can't get it in here, no matter what the person sitting across the table is telling you, it's just words that'll go in and out until the little whisper comes back in your ear. So this is obviously something that is going to be a nonstop battle, right? For the rest of your life, you will have to combat that part of your personality that for some reason wants to try to make you less than what you deserve.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a daily struggle.
Daily?
Mm-hmm. For the most part. I mean, it's longer stretches now that I'm 2.5 years sober now. Clean and sober.
How good does that feel to say?
It's amazing, because I thought I was a lifer. I didn't think I would ever get it together.
You've got terminologies for this. Like, you know, I'm a lifer. Like, I wouldn't even think to say it like that. You really had it. It's so consumed. Your life was so consumed by it that you were just like, this is me.
Right.
This is my story. And now you're free from that. And you got the other Megan, you got a squad that, she's here with us in the studio on the other side of the cameras, and you're starting to see some light in this story. Whereas I feel like during that period, even though there was the high that might have been what your brain was trying to convince you was happiness, it's not. And now you're actually starting to be like, maybe I can find make this thing worthwhile. I can turn this story around. So you said that wasn't your lowest point, though. You said even sitting in jail with a felony, after 7 years of struggling with addiction, you don't think that was your lowest point. What rock bottom do you think that you discovered? Because maybe that's, I tell a lot of people, most of the most successful people I've met, the people that do hit a rock bottom, it's just a great foundation to build up from. Once you really get down to a point where you're at almost nothing, or you face extreme tragedy or extreme loss or extreme difficulty, if you're going to go on, you have to find purpose. And finding purpose, or finding like even just the willingness to fight in yourself, is extremely powerful.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say was a rock bottom? Because it may be an influential part of why you're here 2.5 years sober.
I don't think there was one specifically that stuck out among the rest. I just had multiple rock bottoms. So that first one was like an eye-opener, but it wasn't enough to fully shift me, So then I think it was, I have 4 felonies. So it was possessions. So it was like I would finally get my life together. I had almost a year sober, and then I lost my grandfather. So then it was like, that was my excuse. That was what my mind needed So
moment of weakness.
yes,
It's
exactly.
going to cripple you.
Exactly. So that was what my brain needed. Like, oh, here's your excuse. Go get high, right? So then I would go like 3 months using, and then 2 months clean, and then a week using, and then a week clean. It was like just 7 years of back and forth, back and forth. Another felony, try again. Another felony, try again. So it was like just this unmanageable chaos that I kept trying to pull myself out of, But I think the worst part about it was my parents would be like, oh, I'm so proud of you, you're doing so well, you know, if you need us, just let us know. And then I would relapse again. And then it was like the disappointment in their faces, like, again, you know, but they knew that they couldn't help me get there. I had to do it myself. So even though they stood behind me, it was still a choice that I had to make. So about 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, I had my son with me. I was doing really good. My parents have custody of him because of all the troubles I was going through. But they had talked to DHS or CPS or whatever, and they said that it was their decision, my parents' decision, if they thought he was safe with me, he could come with me. So he had been living with me when I moved down here. He moved here with us. And he had been here with me for a couple years. We were doing really good, and then I messed up again. So I was talking to a counselor, a one-on-one counselor, and I was telling him how I was struggling. They called CPS. CPS called my parents and made my parents come down and take him from me because I was struggling. And I think that was like, okay, you know, enough is enough. It's time to pull it together. But even then, after that, I still relapsed again. When my sister got pregnant, and I thought about what I put my son through and what I did not want to put my niece through, my sister and I looked at each other, and we were like, okay, let's do this. We're done. And it was like all the pieces finally came together, and the light shined through, as stupid as it sounds, and we just did it. Since then, we've been doing it together, just taking the right steps, doing the right thing.
Wow, that's cool hearing how you put that, like all the pieces in your life that you needed to come together finally did. And then it was like, okay, I can win this battle. And like you said, it's a daily struggle, but you learn that you're a fighter and you can combat what's going on. You know what I mean? You don't, even when you were just telling that story, when you said, like, when my grandfather passed away, that was the excuse I needed. You now look at it from that perspective, but back then it was like, no, that's the reason I need to.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can't grieve possibly. I can't naturally mourn. I need something to help me get. So for somebody that understands addiction better than people that are sitting on the outside like me, that I can only understand it academically and you know, informationally, I can't actually experience what you were like. An opioid epidemic in this country is something that we still are experiencing, even though it's not in the media as much. And just recently I heard that Courtney Reinick finally got the Amber Reinick House for Recovery for Livingston County. It got approved. So she's been fighting that battle forever. She lost her sister to heroin addiction or an opiate addiction. You know her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
I mean, I don't know her, but I know the story, yeah.
Yeah, she's been in here a couple times. So it's amazing to hear that we are like making progress. But as someone that has battled through this, what do you think we can do better as a society, as people, to try to get people to get out of those situations? I know it comes down a lot to them, but maybe it's what is allowing kids to fall into it in the first place and things like that. Just speak from the perspective of what do you think that we could do better so that fewer people lose 7 or 14 years of their life to something that they don't deserve?
I think it starts young. I mean, who didn't have the DARE class in school when we were kids, right? But it didn't mean anything to me when I was 18, you know? It was like, so I think maybe building something from there and then keeping it throughout the years, or even like AA does live talks, so people go up, they tell their story. I think that hearing it in high school, if someone would have came to the high school and told their story and what they went through, that you might think of that later. But I think that the jail system is a problem. I am not the person that I was then. I am not violent. I'm not a thief. I was, but I'm not that person. So putting me in jail for those things, even though that wasn't the cause, like I was not that person, I think that's a problem. I think that there needs to be a better way to put addicts either into a rehab or a different type of jail so that you can work on yourself personally instead of just being incarcerated and then like, okay, you're free to deal with your problems. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. I mean, and especially you're almost labeled at that point,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you're slapped with, now, like you said, felonies, which ruins countless opportunities for you to have a better life. We had a lady in here, Megan Reckling. She was running for state representative, and she actually talked about this. She said we need to do a much better job at not putting things on people's record that permanently destroys them. We need to look more at the intent of people or what their circumstances are or situations. Because if you want to turn your life around, you want a community that wants you to turn your life around and wants to support that action. As soon as you slap a label on someone as you're a felon and you're a drug addict and you're these things, now fix your life, fix your self-esteem, and fix your circumstances and do better. That's kind of hard to do when you're being told that you're all these things. You were, but
Right.
that's like the beauty of life. We can be something in the past. We can learn from it, we can grow from it, and we can be better human beings. Like if someone walked in the door for the first time ever right now, and you and I both walked up to them and I introduced myself, hey, my name's James, and you say, hey, I'm Megan, how are you? They would only know that human being that exists now. And if you're not a person that would steal or harm them or do anything to try to, destroy their life, you don't deserve to be treated, for things that happened 10 years ago that you learned lessons from.
Right.
But we almost have a judicial system that's made that way.
Oh, yeah.
That once you mess up once, guess what? You're a screw up. And the scary thing about that is you're just making people more likely to get desperate again or fall into bad circumstances again or relapse on drugs. Because now when you are like, you know what, I want to turn my life around, I want to do better for my son, I'm going to go apply for this job, and they go, nope, sorry, you got this.
We don't hire felons. I hear that so often.
We need to adjust that. We absolutely need to take a step back, and we need to look at circumstances better. Like if you murder somebody, I'm not saying you can't turn your life around, you can't be a better person, but there's it's going to be a different level than someone that was addicted
Right.
to an opiate that, is everywhere.
Right.
We need to do a better job with that. And that's a huge thing that I feel like in the future generations we should be talking about, and our elected officials need to be talking about, is almost everybody in their life probably knows someone that has struggled with addiction. And then especially if they recover, or if you could rewind the clock back to the person before the addiction, you'd be like, that's a good human being. They just fell into bad circumstances.
Right.
So if we tell them forever, well, you're forever a bad person. If they accept that, they might as well do bad things.
Right.
But you're fighting back and being like, no, I'm not that person anymore.
Right.
So I'll work within all these stupid strings that I have to follow now. I can't go in this doorway, apparently, even though I'm a good person now. I have to only apply for this career. Something needs to be fixed there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's even like when I moved down here 5 years ago, the reason we chose this area is because I applied to Eastern. I was going to try to go back and get my bachelor's degree. I had to do a conference call with the board because I'm a felon, because I'm an addict. I had to do a conference with the board. I took like double the time it would take to get accepted. I had to like do certain classes and stuff to like prove myself or whatever. I only did one semester because I decided that school was just not for me at that point in my life. But it was still a struggle just to get to go to school. I can't leave the country. I can't apply at certain jobs. I'm basically left to minimum wage jobs. For the first time in my life, I'm trying to buy a house, trying to put some money away. I can't find a decent job to be able to put money away and continue to pay my bills and take care of my kids. So it's a huge struggle because of who I was before, not because of who I am now.
Yeah, there's a huge hopelessness to that. Like, I love to travel. I love to see the world. I leave the country constantly. Putting myself in your shoes, if I had made choices, which I definitely went through bad stages of my life where I did things I wasn't proud of at all, I could have absolutely made one more bad decision and ended up with a felony on my record. And now all of a sudden, that would be incredibly discouraging, very disheartening to be like, wait a second, I permanently have to deal for the next 50, 60, 70 years of my life with damage from a period of my life that was horrific for me more than anyone else, that I worked to turn around, where most people never get out of it.
Right.
And instead of me being able to like help others and try to work to make my community better and things like that, you're going to punish me for the rest of my existence. We need to change that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm sure there's still ways that you can beat the system, because the system is designed the way it's designed, and then it usually evolves and changes very slowly. But I don't think there's any, as a felon, I mean, could you not, let's say you started your own business. You found something that you could get into. You could find other people that know the Megan that exists right now.
Right.
Not the one from before. And they go, you know what? We're going to go in on this. You can still beat the system.
Oh, yeah.
So don't be too discouraged by the fact that like, well, all these people are saying you can't walk through this door. There's still doors out there for you. But I think you are absolutely correct in the way that we need to have more honest conversations with our elected officials. And what we need to do is get more people that are not addicts, that have no criminal record, that are considered like upstanding citizens of society, right, to champion this cause and say, wait a second, that's not right. Not at all. You should not be punishing someone that way. You know, because I feel that way. And I would be considered, I'm the business owner in the community. I have nothing on my criminal record. I've never been to jail. But hearing this, I am discouraged for you because of the system.
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. You know, you take small strides where you can. I dug myself such a huge hole as far as finances and just my spirit in general, you know, trying to dig yourself out of that at this point, I'm just content with figuring out the rest of who I am and try to move forward, digging myself slowly out of the financial debt I put myself in, fixing my credit so that eventually I can buy a house and, you know, someday own a car that is not used would be fantastic. Make sure my son goes to school, you know, goes to college or trade school. Like, those are my goals at this point, just trying to put together a little bit of something that I can be proud of.
And there's hope. I can see it in your eyes. I can see the emotion when you're saying those words. You believe that it's possible to achieve those things, and you want that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I can see that in your face. So it's like you have a vision of the future of what's possible. It's just a very difficult road for you to get there.
Right.
I also think you're so willing to share your story, and like, because when I asked you to come on this podcast, this is a nervous thing. You know, like you said today, you're nervous. You're sitting down with someone that you know very, very little to tell a very emotional, difficult story. Stories like this, though, are powerful. Like you said, when you're in high school, if a woman had sat down with you just like this and explained to you how badly, you know, her life went downhill and how, man, I breezed through school, I had a good, loving family, I thought everything's going to be good. Next thing you know, I find myself in prison, and now I have the judicial system working against me, where I'm a felon, I have these things. All I want to do is have a better life now because I had a shitty life, and I want to provide a better life, and I'm being held down from that. Getting to children at the right age might help stop this chaos. So what's to stop you now? Because as you're sitting with me here today, I respect your courage, and I respect your ability to say, listen, this is who I was, this is who I am, and this is the current struggle. But I think you should put yourself out there and try to find out, can I get in with the local schools? Like, I actually have connections everywhere, but you know, I pretty much almost every year go to one of the local schools and speak to the children just about, you know, life and things like that. But you could do the exact same thing, and you could sit down, and if you only affected a couple kids, if you're going to affect a couple kids not going down that road,
right,
and then those kids can make the world a little bit better and you can make a huge impact.
Right.
Because my favorite people in life are not people that were like spoon-fed, had it easy, crushed through life, because like, duh.
Right.
Congratulations. Like, I'm not shocked by that. I'm not shocked. If you play a video game and you put in all the cheat codes and you have all the advantages, you have all endless money, and all, you're going to breeze through the game. It's not going to be a struggle. I like people that have struggled a lot and then become successful, or then find fulfillment, or however that is, because we all define success differently.
Right.
But you have the possibility to be one of those people. Maybe you could be one of the people championing the cause of, like, we need to restructure the way that we label people that struggled with an addiction versus bad human beings. Those are different things.
Right.
We need to get to our children younger and like, yeah, DARE was a good idea. Remember, like, hey guys, don't smoke, don't drink, otherwise
Just
you're
say no, right?
Yeah, just say no because you're a loser if you do drugs. Like that was the basic story, and
Pretty much.
somehow it worked for me as a kid. Well, probably my dad at home was like, if you ever smoke or drink, I'll beat you to death, and I'm like, I don't want to be beaten to death.
Right.
So, but for whatever reason, like I dodged those bullets. But we do need to just think about how much we shove information down. I mean, the media crams information down people's throat. Schools push agenda down people's throat. Everything is. Can we at least make it a priority to try to give information to the
Right.
impressionable children that'll avoid these situations? You know, because like nowadays, what is the drug education in school? Did you have how much does your son learn about not doing drugs?
I mean, he's kind of a different story because we were always really honest. Like once I started to try to find recovery, so we've always been honest. He has always known where I was when I was in jail. Or
But I mean,
rehab.
through the school alone. Let's say you took your story out of
I
it.
don't think they do anything, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, that's a disaster if that's the
Yeah.
case.
Oh, definitely.
Or if once a semester an officer comes in and goes, hey, kids, don't do drugs.
Right.
You know what I mean? At some point you might go, I'm going to challenge authority. And then you're like, no, I'm going to do drugs. You know?
Right.
So we absolutely need to make sure that, I mean, these are just vital things.
Well, and it's a biological thing too. It comes up through the genes. So my grandfather is an alcoholic. So if you have a family member who is an addict, you most likely are going to be an addict. My son is at huge risk because both his father and I are both addicts. So it's like it's a way bigger problem than what everyone thinks it is. It's not just by chance or you make a choice to be an addict. That's not how it works. It's embedded in you from birth.
You're like predisposed to be more likely to fall into things.
Exactly.
But I would also think though, it's probably more of like part of the mind's psyche. So it's not that you're like you're naturally drawn to like I need to find heroin, but you're drawn to things, right? So it's almost like all addicts have drive or they have like a certain obsession part of their
Right.
brain. You almost have to like get to those people and make sure that it's a healthy obsession. It's something that like you can get addicted to and really be consumed by that is not going to destroy your life, because if you that first time you try cocaine, that might be the only thing that matters to you
Right,
now.
exactly.
Versus like, you know what, I'm going to put all my effort and energy into art or into being a musician or anything that you can be consumed by, because it's more of, you know, it's like the psychology of like some people are just consumed by things. Some people can drink, like I'm a person, I could drink alcohol every day for a month, 5 times a day, and then stop like this and not have a second thought about alcohol. Not at all. I just have no like, you know, I don't
That
get
addictive
stuck on things
personality,
like
yeah.
that. But I can imagine it must be such a difficult struggle for people on the opposite side of the spectrum that once something gets in the mind, you know what I mean? It's like you're just on this like I don't think about it. Like, you know, I don't even understand alcoholism because if I'm not currently drinking, it never crosses my mind. I never one time would think
Right.
like I want to go have a beer. Doesn't even cross my mind.
Right.
But that's where we're wired so differently.
I think we can take it a step further too, though, and have knowledge from the parents. Like, this is what your grandfather went through, or this is what I struggled with. So, because if my son went out and decided he was going to try something, it could ultimately change his life. But now he has the knowledge knowing that his father and I both are addicts. And if he takes that road, it could look like our life. You know what I'm saying? So if we share with our children what our grandparents went through, what our parents went through, what we went through, more honestly, I feel like they would have a better scale to judge things by, knowing what addiction is. But like you said, a lot of people don't even know what it is, like just ignorant to the fact that it's here and it's real and it's huge.
That's gotta be terrifying too, because you're someone that's experienced that life, and now you know there's drugs available everywhere, and you have a kid right in that age where things are gonna get presented to him, and it's gonna
Right.
have to come down to like his moral compass and his knowledge and
Exactly.
and the environment that he's had at home to say, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna take a different road.
Right.
That's a scary thing.
It is very scary. Yeah, I think about it all the time. With my parents, you know, people say it takes a village to raise your children.
Of course.
With my parents and my sister and my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, everybody involved, I feel like he is an outstanding child. Like, just way better than I could have ever imagined. if it was just me in my addiction trying to raise him. So I think he has a really good understanding of what's going on and what his life would look like if he took that road. But there's kids out there that don't understand. I have no idea. Like I was at 18. I had no idea.
Yeah, it sounds like just hearing your story that you were just like so blissfully ignorant of the choices. Like the first couple times it was probably so like no big deal. Like, oh, this is nice. This is cool. This will be a part of my life while I crush everything like I always do.
Right.
And then fast forward, 5 or 7 years and you're going like, what happened?
Right.
It's incredible, So, man, it was really great to sit and talk with you today. We've already covered 45 minutes of dialogue with no problem. I mean, just having good conversation. And I think conversations like this are crucial, both at home, but also in society.
Yes.
We need to stop having a stigma about people that were drug addicts as of like they're horrible people that, like, oh my God, don't be like that. They're your brothers, your sisters, your daughters, your friends. They're just normal people that fell into something that's, terrible.
Right. Well, and a lot of people say it's a choice. You chose to be an addict. I might have chose to try it that first time, but after that, your brain takes over and it is not a choice anymore. It is an overwhelming craving and obsession that you cannot shut off. It's a disease, just like depression and anxiety.
It's a disease of the mind.
Right.
It's something that just deep in your psychology, once you're infected.
Right, exactly.
That's actually, honest to God, it's the reason I've never done any hard drugs because, like, I'm a person that's been able to, like, I've smoked weed, I've drank a little, I've that's basically it. I've never had a cigarette, but I've had a cigar once or twice, a couple times. But the only reason because I remember being a young kid and being like, I'll try cocaine at one point. I remember thinking that because I know that I have, like, I normally just don't, like, I don't get stuck on things.
Right.
But then I literally thought to myself, the only reason I stayed away from hard drugs, it's funny to just be admitting this out loud on my podcast, is I said to myself, like, wait a second, what if you did really enjoy it and then all of a sudden it became a priority in your life? Whereas, like, I'm looking around at my life and I'm like, I got so many goals, I'm crushing it, tons of people look up to me, like, I feel like I'm building a life that I couldn't even dream of. It's just not worth it. Like, even if the experience was like, oh, wow, that was awesome, I felt great, it's not worth it to me because, like, in my one hand, I know how much I would have to juggle. It's like a scale. Like, yes, let's say I'm throwing this out there again. Let's say cocaine was this unbelievable great experience. To me, it still will nowhere near or come close to outweighing what I have in my life right now. I have unbelievable relationships. I have wonderful people in all aspects of my life. I get to travel around the world. I get to do, like, I feel like I'm the luckiest man that I know. So that's what keeps me away from that. But if I was someone that didn't have those things, if I was just a guy that's life was super middle of the road, like I didn't like my job, I was kind of depressed, I would probably do it. I know myself, at least at one point I probably would because I'd be like, well, what do I really have to lose? Might as well find out.
Let me tell you though, my best day using does not even compare to how good it is on my worst day not using. Not even close. I'm still, like I said, fighting financially. I'm still trying to build myself back up. I'm still trying to build a life that I can be proud of outside of recovery, like as a normal human being, not as an addict. And it's still so much better here sitting on the bottom of recovery, of not using, as it was me feeling like I was sitting on top using. It's not even comparable. So even without the business and feeling the way that you do, it is so incredible, the life that I live without using, without addiction.
That is fascinating because take those words and now apply that to the idea that there's still like this incredible grip that this thing has on you. And it's hard to say that like, how can that still exist when, like, you just said, even my worst day not using, I'm living a better life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So then you should be able to just beat that other little voice in your head to death when it pops up. You're like, yeah, right. Even my best day under that circumstance, I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't backpedal because I'm about to create something.
Oh, yeah. It's a self-awareness, though, too. I know way before the relapse when it's coming. I can feel it. It sounds silly, but I can, like, feel it creeping in on me. Like, I will act a certain way. I'll shut down, not get on social media.
Try to explain this in like as much detail as you can, because this is really interesting to me. So well before.
Oh, yeah. All the pieces of all the rehabs and all the counseling and all the AA meetings and NA meetings came together when I got sober, but it made me figure out who I am. So I have so much self-awareness now and know myself so well, clean and sober, that I can, like, if I have a day where I don't want to get out of bed and I don't want to do anything and I'm feeling a little down, I know that eventually that's going to lead to something that I don't want to get into, like relapse. So I make sure that I make the change. I get out of bed. I take that shower. I go to work. I call a friend and say, hey, look, I need to talk. Or I go to a meeting. Or I call my counselor, like, can we set up a session? Like, I know well ahead how I act when something's coming on. And I can notice it now and fix it when 5 years ago, I would not have been able to point that out.
Wow. So self-awareness is absolutely massive for addicts. Because otherwise, I mean, they talk a lot. I study psychology a ton, and they talk a lot about the, like, we're literally driven by our limbic system. We're not really driven by what we think. We're driven by the way that we feel. Mm-hmm. So the way that you feel compels your actions, and then usually the brain either justifies it or just doesn't deal with it. It just kind of, you just do. You're like a dog, like hungry, eat. You don't have to think that, like, I should eat now. You just eat.
Right.
So you basically have started to take your conscious brain, look at Megan as a person, and when her actions start matching the woman that's walking down the wrong road, you cut it off early on.
Right.
It's like you learn to be the general of your own mind. You're like, no, we're not going that way. Get your ass up or make this phone call, because this can take us down a road we don't want to be down.
Right. I scared myself a couple of weeks ago, and my friend was like, no. But so I missed accidentally, like, I'm so big on making sure I make my appointments and I don't cancel, because that's another sign for me. When I start canceling appointments or just not showing up for things, I know that I'm on the wrong track. So I accidentally missed a couple of appointments in the same week and just completely forgot about it. I had a lot going on, and I called my friend and I was like, I'm freaking out. Like, something's going on because I missed 2 appointments. And she's like, that's just human things. Like, you don't have to put everything to recovery. Like, sometimes you just have a lot going on and you forget where you're at. It's not a big deal. Like, you're going to be fine. And I was like panicking. What do I need to change? What can I fix? I'm on the wrong road. Da, da, da. And she was like, just take a breath. It's fine.
Your friend gave good input. I mean, but you probably are. You're probably hyper aware of things.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to a level where you're just trying to do everything in your power to not end up back there.
Right.
It even happens to me and I write everything down. Like, if you could see the other side of this podcast, well, I'll actually show you after the podcast. I have 8 checklists that I keep. I categorize my checklists based on what they're for, and then I have checklists for every single thing.
I'm a sticky note person, so I understand.
It's almost the same thing, right? But, like, even still, sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I completely forgot about this thing that I should have known about. That's being human.
Right.
You know what I mean? Until we're robots, until we just replace this thing with AI and we're just like, on March the 7th at blah, blah, blah. Like, no, it's part of the human condition. You know, we're going to make mistakes. And you know what? I think there's a certain level of, you got to be able to forgive yourself. You've probably had to forgive yourself for a lot of the past to start being the woman that you are today.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to forgive yourself for little mistakes that you make and say, hey, as long as it doesn't really knock me off the course, and as long as I stay the course for the future that I want, I'm doing better.
Oh, yeah.
My worst day off it, I'm still doing better.
Yes.
I really like those words that you said right there. That's something powerful. Like, those words right there to paint to a young, impressionable mind that, listen, the worst day right now where I'm labeled a felon, I have all these struggles, I'm trying to get out of debt, that doesn't sound good, right? All of these things, these sound like serious problems. It is still better than the woman that thought her life was fine while she was high on drugs.
Oh, yeah.
That is huge. You know what I mean? Like, it was beautiful to hear you say those words, because I feel like that paints perspective.
Oh, yeah.
That takes your perspective in this life through what you've gone through, and it makes it into like a map that other people can understand. I can't understand addiction, but I can understand the message that you put into those words.
Yeah. It's been a really rough road, but in all honesty, I wouldn't change it, because I know myself better now than I did in high school when I thought I had my shit together. I am so proud and happy to be the person that I am today, but I wouldn't have been her without the struggles that I went through in the last 14 years.
What you just said is actually a big reason, in my opinion, on why you're doing better now. When you look at your past and your failures and your mistakes and the things you're not proud of, and you start reshifting your mind to, instead of looking at them as like failures and their lessons and their progress and their times in life that made you who you are now. It's your story.
Right.
Like, you had a roller coaster. You went up there and you're like, oh, everything's great. And then, oh, what is going on?
Right.
You know what I mean? And now, at the end of your life, you'll be a woman that overcame extreme adversity. You won't be a statistic that failed to OD. You won't be the mother that abandoned her children to drugs and never looked back. Those stories are out there.
Yeah.
Those stories are out there all over the place.
I know too many of them.
You broke free from that. But it's like you're rewiring your mind to see that. Hey.
It's perspective.
Yes.
Huge.
So funny. I just had another woman on my podcast, I think like 2 days ago, and we said the word perspective like 10 times and we were laughing about it. But it's that important in life.
It's huge. Oh, yeah. To take it and turn it into a positive or switch the way your brain. I'll have a really rough day at work and I'll come home and I'll be so cranky. And I will just sit down for a minute and be like, you know what? You're not high. You're not heading to Detroit to try to get heroin. You're not spending huge quantities of money. So you know what? Not such a bad day. Everything's fine. It's good. It's going to be fine. And it's just that flip of perspective. And all of a sudden, my day's brighter and I'm good.
Because it's in between your ears. You know what I mean? And that's like the thing why maybe life is so much more difficult than it needs to be, is like it's intangible in here. And if you don't regulate it and you're not on top of it, it can take you down all kind of wild roads.
Right.
You know, like you have to really be in charge of your thoughts.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There's like that old quote, you know, like watch your thoughts for they become actions. Watch your actions for it becomes your character. Watch your character becomes your destiny. That's how it works.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you start letting off, like just monitoring the little thoughts that are going on, next thing you know, you're doing shit you're not proud of. And you're like, well, how did that happen? It happened because you didn't catch it at square one.
Right, exactly. And that's how I feel with the recovery thing. If I can catch it early enough, then I can make the change to make sure I don't go back the other direction. Because that's not where I want to be ever again.
I really like that. Me and my friend one time, he teaches here. He's one of my jiu-jitsu instructors. We had this conversation when we were younger about like tipping points in life, where what happens is like you don't normally make a mistake just out of the blue. Like instantly, I woke up today and I did the dumbest thing in my life.
Right.
That's just not how it happens.
No.
What happens is like little things manifest, or you allow them to take place, and they get worse and worse and worse. And then the next thing you know, you go off a tipping point and you do something that you are not proud of.
Right.
And then that causes damage. And him and I had talked about the fact that like if you can really try to catch those things early on and stop it here, it's not a big deal yet. It's a snowball rolling down a hill that has no momentum, that you can just go like, no problem. It's
Right.
not this massive boulder that just steamrolls you. You're like, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like maybe I'll edit in a cartoon of that, but it's just it's like we have to monitor our minds. And if more people took the time to sit down and really analyze their mind and their perspective, I think we would do a lot better.
Right.
And maybe that's why there's such problems in our society, is we are entertained 24/7. You have information just crammed down your brain, advertisements, you are so flooded with information that all of that is in the forefront of your mind. If I go like ba-da-ba-ba-ba, that is right in your frontal lobe. You just went like, I know what that is. You know?
I'm loving it.
Exactly. But we're not sitting down and breaking down our thoughts and the things that really matter.
Right.
Like, what am I doing to make this life a little bit better?
Right.
You know, so like I said, man, just anything else that you'd like to say on the podcast today, anything you'd like to capture, people that you would like to thank or shout out. You know, this is going to exist forever. We just captured a moment in time, an hour in time that's going to exist forever. And some people down the road may watch this and be incredibly moved by it. So just anything that you would like to capture, anything you might say to your younger self or someone that was struggling, or someone, you know, just anything that you would like to capture before we wrap this up. Megan, it's your time.
I honestly don't think that saying anything to my younger self would have made a difference in what happened. So I would have just said, just keep fighting. For anybody out there that's going through this or has been through it, just keep fighting. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Because like I said, I definitely thought I was a lifer and that I would not get out of where I was at. My parents, my family, never, ever giving up on me, that's huge. But if you need somebody, if you don't have a supportive family, if you don't have friends that can help you, there's people out there who can help you. So definitely look for them. AA meetings, counselors. Hit me up on Facebook. I just had a cousin call and say, my son's going through this and I'm really worried, and I gave some advice and I said, call me if you need me. I am not ashamed. I have no problem telling my story, and I want to help where I can. So just find those people like me who are willing to help. We're here. We need to stick together and fight through this together, because in the beginning you feel like you're alone, but you're not. There's people out there too.
I love that. And I actually have a gentleman coming on my podcast on October 9th. And I don't know if we're going to go into that part of his story or not, but if I introduce you to him as he is today, you would see this incredibly successful, really good looking. He's 6'4", perfectly in shape, ripped guy who is a 9-0 undefeated professional boxer getting signed by a major management company. He is literally conquering life so much. And the crazy thing is, he was a heroin addict who died and was brought back to life, and really went through some incredible struggles. And now he has won the battle like you have, and he is crushing it. And he has a young daughter at home named Taya, and a lot of, I think, that driving force to be better is for his daughter. But it's that same thing. There's people out there that are winning the battle. So for every person that's lost the battle or that is losing the fight, there's people that are winning the battle, which means there's hope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I told one of the girls at work part of my story, and they said, oh, my gosh, you don't look like a heroin addict. You don't look like an opiate addict. And I'm like, but what do they look like?
Yeah, like I said, if you saw Taylor, he's actually modeling now. He's doing modeling. He's a professional boxer. He's the most in shape guy I know. Like there's not a look.
It's a stigma.
Exactly. We have to change the story. We have to change the way that people think about these things. And I think if we could shift that across society, and we were more like, we need to help these people versus these are bad people,
yes,
you would enact serious change.
Absolutely. And it's time.
It's absolutely time. I mean, we're more together than we've ever been ever, even though if you look at the state of the country right now, there's division everywhere. I just recently challenged a governor's order, which I never thought I would do in my entire life, and I don't want to ever do it again.
Right.
There's madness out there, but there's potential.
Absolutely.
There's potential for people to come together, have challenging dialogue, and envision a better future. And we're the ones that control that.
Exactly.
The old guard is going away. And we need to look at what do we want the future to look like?
It's got to start somewhere.
100%. And I think if anyone that was really oh, drug addicts are pieces of shit, if they sat down with people and heard their stories, and especially if they didn't know their background, what if I had the exact same story as you? No one would know. They would only see the person that sits here today.
Right.
So they'd be oh, James, you're this, and you don't know. So don't judge the book by its cover. We learned that when we were 5 years old. You know what I mean?
Right.
And let's try to make the world better. So Megan, I really appreciate you being here with me today. I appreciate the story. I really think this can have a profound impact on people. And again, if you're interested in maybe speaking at some local schools and stuff, I have connections everywhere. I've spoken at multiple graduations. I've gone in and done seminars at schools. And I think we need to focus on educating young kids before it turns disastrous.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because although it is great hearing your story of recovery and it's so cool that you battled through it, the more people we can keep out of that fight,
to save someone from it would be incredible.
The better. And again, people going through it, take some inspiration, reach out to Megan, reach out to me. Maybe you want to tell your story. If you've had a tough time and you're like, you know what, I'm inspired by that. And I think there's strength in vulnerability. Fighters will tell you that there's strength in vulnerability. Reach out to me and we'll see what we can do. So thank you
for having me.
No,
it's been
of course.
A pleasure.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll wrap this up.